And we're ready.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for joining us for this April 26, 2021 Auburn City Council meeting. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And if we would all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. And because we had rearranged the agenda last time, we have our COVID-19 economic recovery efforts update. So Amy's pulling in.
Yeah, really quick, another small technicality. If I could roll call you guys really quickly.
Oh, please. Okay.
Councilmember Berlant.
I am here.
Amara.
Present.
Dowden Calvillo.
Present.
Riddell Harris. Here. And Mayor Spokely.
Here. Thank you for keeping me in line, Amy.
No.
Now we'll move on to the COVID-19 economic recovery efforts updates.
I have April and Jackie joining us. I don't see Christine Eubink on the call this evening.
Okay. As typical, we'll go ahead and jump to Jackie. If you would give us the chamber update, please.
We've been pretty busy with getting all the structures up. If you see around town, you'll see that Monkey Cat built their beautiful structure. Ninja Sushi and La Herradera have put theirs up. We're looking at getting them some more structures to make it a little bit longer and more suitable for the two restaurants. Club Car and Royal Indian have theirs delivered and have some manpower. They just need a lesson maybe on how and getting it up. So hopefully the city can help with that. And then I was over by Baked and Brewed earlier today, and I think that they had a panel up. I'm not quite sure. But I think they're trying to work on making theirs too. So they're also Restaurant Josephine. Theirs was delivered last week. So hopefully theirs will go up soon as well. And then in the northern side of Auburn, El Agave has a structure up that they are decorating to the full extent for Cinco de Mayo. So we're really excited about those. Excellent. Other than that, we're kind of just working our way through. As some of you saw, we did have a little spot on Channel 13 News about 4th of July. And thanks to Daniel for giving them my cell phone number. We were able to talk about that. We are moving forward cautiously just to make sure that we follow all COVID-19 guidelines and see what happens as we get closer. As of right now, all we're planning for is a parade and the fireworks. We are not holding an event inside the fairgrounds. So that is not a gathering that we will be hosting this year. So.
Great. Thank you very much, Jackie. Appreciate the update. April, we'll go ahead and jump to you and get a downtown Auburn update.
Jackie told you everything that's happening in downtown with the structures. I did send out an email to John, and Daniel I know loves to do hard labor, and Alice I guess isn't available right now, but yeah, there are some places who need a little help with structures, and if Jackie says it's really easy, so I'm sure she knows, but we just need a little bit of a crew to help. I know that Monkey Cat did a little sawzall on a piece of theirs so they would be flush with the sidewalk, so there could be some adjustments. I know that the basic structure, it sounds like it's really easy to do if you know what you're doing. But you know, there might be some special tools that are needed and stuff like that. So I don't know if that's Public Works is an option for that. I know that there was a comment about that a while back, but that's kind of our last little hump to get over. And then the other issue is events. We would like to start booking some music, some, you know, just in the district for the late spring and summer, but I'm not clear on what the guidelines are on that at this point. I know that there was the cruise night, I understand, was okay. So I'm thinking that would give some leeway for things that were usually less crowded than cruise night. So, but I'm not positive if we should move forward with that and do, contract with people, or if it's still premature.
Well, I would think that open air concerts like we've done in the past in the downtown area and Old Town areas should be just fine. John, maybe we can take a look at that and reach out to April and try to get her some guidance there. I would think that we would be kind of clear to go.
Yeah, no, we'll get with April and see if we can work it all out.
Great, because actually groups are getting booked, so we want to get in there and not lose our opportunity if it's possible. Thank you.
Thank you, April. Appreciate it. No Old Town update this evening. Any questions from the council for the folks who gave the COVID update? Rachel, I see your hand up. Daniel, will come to you next.
Just a little comment on 4th of July. I just want to make sure that we're thinking through the number of people that might be coming. If there's other events that are canceled and people end up coming from numerous other locations, we might have a lot more people than normal. And we already normally have a big problem with traffic and with making sure that everything works for the number of mass people that all leave right after the fireworks. So I just want to make sure that we kind of coordinate and think all that through and plan ahead. If everything's canceled with other groups and we're one of the few places that's doing it, some people have said, I don't know for sure, we just want to make sure that we're planning ahead for that number of people and that everything is safe and well coordinated.
Yeah, I talked to John earlier. We're going to work with the police department and let them know it is a state property. So there's only so much that APD can help out with. But I don't think anything close to us is being canceled. It's a farther distance that's being canceled, like Dixon. I don't think Roseville's being canceled. So I would see that they would end up there, not in Auburn. So as much as I do think that we might have an escalated amount, I also think there's going to be a fair amount of people that don't come because we are switching things around this year.
Okay. Yeah, last I heard, Roseville is doing fireworks, but they're anywhere that people are gathering to look at them, they're limiting the number of people so they're not too crowded together. So it might be a reduced number of people that can gather at certain spots. So we'll have to see, because I know they're going to be limiting that.
So that's something that the fairgrounds has to take charge on, since we will not be hosting the event inside the fairgrounds. And they'll keep it somewhat open because they have the permanent businesses in the fairgrounds. They have to keep it open for those businesses. We hope to have another 1 or 2 businesses in there before the 4th of July. So there's going to be a gathering. To what extent, I'm not quite sure. Okay. But we will be working with the city and the police department to try and figure that out.
Okay, thanks.
And Daniel, you had a question?
Yeah, I am. It raised a second one for me real quick. I'd be curious if John, in your interactions with the county, if there's any pre-guidance per se on when the governor has announced that mid-June the restrictions isn't the right word, but the blueprint for a safe economy more or less go away. Does that include the restrictions on any public gatherings? So, are there limitations that will be still required for public events, whether it be the cruise night or for the downtown music and the art show, whatever? I'd just be curious if we have any idea of what June 15th looks like.
Well, kind of going with the same line that I think we've had throughout all of this. I know that the state is subject to change and coming up with things, but I will just be really straight with you. Haven't gotten anything straight from the state. I will share with you that just based on a number of inquiries from different groups, I go online to the state's website. There really has not been a whole lot of change in overall guidance documents that have been provided out there regarding events. Everything right now is still staying within the color-coded structure on things. But as things get closer. I will tell you that the probably the number one biggest one that we did approve was on the cruise night. And just given the anticipation, I'll tell you, I've talked with the organizer for that, and I said, listen, we have got to keep our eyes out what the guidance for these types of outdoor events are. So I hate to say that we're going to go right up to the 11th hour for many of these, but I think that's what we're just going to have to do. And I think on the June 15th thing, everybody is just sitting back waiting to see what happens. Because I don't think the state even knows what they're going to do.
I'd also note for the group that, as I mentioned last week, I track the weekly updates of COVID numbers, and last week we went over 10 new cases per 100,000, which technically would have meant that we went to the purple. And so I asked the question: so are we going backwards? I'll preface that we were only over 10 and very little over 10 for just one day. And the county said, no, the guidelines have changed, that there is no going backwards anymore. There is only going forward. So we're not progressing through the tiered system down to orange yet, or even red. Orange yet. But I would just note that there is a change, that there is no backwards at this moment. So just passing that along. But then my second question was real quick for April, and maybe it was in the email that you sent. When does downtown plan to do this kind of work party that you're requesting Public Works and any other council member who wants to roll their sleeves up and help you?
When anybody says they can help. Yeah, anytime that we can get a couple of people together. I mean, Echo Valley says that, I don't know, I think there was a tale that a 7-year-old woman put it up by herself, but I don't know if I believe that. But, I think it'll just, if we do it one time, I think we can help other people. It's just kind of figuring out how the little, tricks of the trade.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, no problem. I think what would be helpful, April, because there might be a group that gets together on a, Wednesday evening or Thursday evening or whatever it may be. And if you let us know, and I've got a couple hours, I'd love to run down and help out. It's I think certainly something that all of us would love to roll our sleeves up and help out. I've got power tools I could bring down if we need to cut things. So if you wouldn't mind letting us know when you get that synergy where a few folks are ready to go, and if we can make it, we'll be there. If we can't, we'll apologize for not being free and come down and help out.
I also can help. I have helped my mom put up numerous horse corrals, so if you want, I can help too. But picking a day a little bit in advance, so that way I can plan kid watching and things like that, is helpful for me.
And I'm available, and I'll volunteer my husband as well.
Lucky guy. Alice?
Yeah. Yes, I just wanted to say, I know with Royal Indian, they're pretty much available anytime except for Mondays between 3 and 5. So I just want to throw that out there. I mean, they pretty much told me they can do it anytime. They can have some people there, but they just they have zero experience in putting that up, and he just doesn't even know where to start. So his calendar is open. Just Mondays between 3 and 5 are the only time that wouldn't work.
Okay, thank you, Alice. Appreciate that.
From what I understand, it's like less than an hour to put it all together. And I've kind of looked at it, and building stuff in the past, it looks pretty simple. But if you don't have experience, obviously it's a lot harder. But I think if just 1 or 2 people that had some kind of experience in it had an hour to kill, then it would be easy to do.
Okay. Well, I guess what you're hearing, April, is we're here to help, and okay. If we have a little advance notice, we'll all be out there and helping out if we can.
I think we just need to find that one handy person and then grow it from there. Okay, thank you.
All righty, anything else on our COVID-19 economic recovery update? Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, April. Appreciate your updates for us all. Have a good evening. Next, we'll go ahead and move on to agenda approval. This is the time set aside for the council members and or the public to ask for removal, postponement, or changes to the listed sequence of an agenda item. The agenda will be approved by a roll call vote of the council. Council, do we have any changes to the sequence of our agenda? Seeing none. Amy, any public comments on our agenda listing this evening?
No, there's not.
That's sort of surprising. All right, we have no comments from the public. I'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
Move we approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Amy, please call roll.
Councilmember Bland?
Aye.
Amara?
Yes.
Dowden Calvillo?
Aye.
Riddell Harris?
Aye.
And Mayor Spokely?
Yes. Thank you all. We'll go ahead and move next on to the consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine in nature and will be approved by one blanket motion with a roll call vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless persons request specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for discussion and separate action. Any items removed will be considered after the motion to approve the consent calendar. John, as typical, I'll go ahead and ask you if you would please run down a quick summary of our consent calendar items for us this evening.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Couple of items. Item 1 are the minutes from March 20th, 22nd, 29th, and 31st. I think we were meeting a lot that month. Item 2 is just the approval of the warrants that were paid during March of this year. Item 3 is the acceptance of funding for fuel reduction, $49,500 in grant funding that's going to come towards fuel reduction in the shaded fuel break. Item 4 is the council approving a job description and a part-time salary range between $16 and $20 an hour. This is first just general part-time help that we might need to do different types of projects around the city, but all part-time. Item 5 is the third in a series of the different on-call agreements. Tonight, we're asking that the council approve on-call agreements with 6 different companies. And I'll tell you that it absolutely worked as we received a number of proposals from company. Just imagine being able to go to some really great restaurants and only pick the best items off of each one. That's the way that this is tonight. Tonight, the on-call agreements are for Jacobs and James Associates for permitting, and NPDS, SOMAS for land surveying, Next Gen Utility Management, Mark Thomas for engineering services regarding storm drain and sewer, and then general civil engineering with Girardelli Associates, Coastland, Bennett, and that's it. So anyway, the on-call services of work, these are all typically agreements that will only be used when necessary. So that is the consent calendar.
You're on mute.
That's strike one tonight. I'll go ahead and go to the council for any comments on the consent calendar or items to be pulled. Councilmember Lang.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I could pull item number 3, please.
Item number 3. Any other items that council would like to pull? Amy, any members of the public have comments on items they want to pull for a separate hearing?
No, and I just checked live. We have not received any requests.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion. Signs number 3.
I'll move that we approve the consent calendar without item number 3.
I'll second.
I'll second. Sorry, go ahead.
The third and fourth, fifth.
Pick somebody, Amy. All right, Amy, go ahead and roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Berlant.
Aye.
Amara.
Yes.
Dowden Calvillo.
Aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
And Mayor Spokely.
Yes. Next is item number 3 from our consent calendar. This is the authorization to accept funds from the Middle Fork American River Hydroelectric Project. Councilmember Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any questions or concerns. I just wanted to highlight for our community the hard work that our fire chief has done to bring this forward. Nearly $50,000 to do fuel reduction work in the Blackstone, Riverview, Gold, Virginia, Tamaru, as well as Borland and Jordan areas, I think deserves to be pulled off and just get a quick recognition that we're continuing to do our part in this, but really the fire department to go after any grant available. So no questions for the fire chief, just a comment of appreciation and flagging it for our community. So Chief, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Berlant. I will give the chief an opportunity to speak briefly if he'd like to. You don't need to, Chief, but do you have any comments you want to share with us and the community?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I will highlight that I think is relevant to this particular project is we've been working with the Placer County Water Agency to get this grant funding several times over the last couple of years. We're finally at the point where we've done all of the mechanical thinning. So this particular grant will allow us to move all the way from Eagle's Nest all the way up to the Aolia area using grazing animals, which means that now we're at the point where we're doing maintenance on the work that we've done to this point, which is really where we've been trying to get to and ultimately where we need to be with the entire Auburn shaded fuel break. What I'll tell you is that this grant allows us to work adjacent to this shaded fuel break, not particularly on the shaded fuel break. So it allows us to maximize the width of the protection for the city. So I want to make sure that that's really clear, that it's not on the shaded fuel break itself. It's actually on private properties within the city of Auburn, and it maximizes our protection. That concludes my comments. Thank you very much for allowing me to make those comments.
Thank you very much, Chief. Anything else from council members? Councilwoman Amara.
I just have a quick question for the chief. Yeah, you said that this is for private property, then a lot of it, some of it?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so if there are some lots that are private and neighbors are concerned about it, is that something that the fire department would go to the owners and have them first try and clear and make it safe? Or is that something that we just go, could you explain the process a little bit?
Yeah, we continue to say to the private property owners that they have a responsibility. And I, in no way do I want to minimize that effort that they're doing. One of our challenges with this particular grant is the type of grant that it is identifies the area that has to be adjacent to the watershed, which puts us right up against the edge of the shaded fuel break. So we really don't have many options other than to work in this area that we've done over and over and over again. We're going to get with Placer County Water District and have some other discussions, because I believe there is a nexus to some other areas that are further away from the shaded fuel break that actually lead to the watershed. But we need to get approval to do that. So the great news is we're at the point where we're maintaining what we're doing. The next piece of this is trying to see if we can expand that into some other areas.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions from the council? All right, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I would move that we authorize the fire chief to accept these American River hydroelectric project funds.
I'll second that.
And Amy, I'm sorry, we have a motion in a second. I didn't ask if we had any public comment on this item.
We do not.
All right, we'll go ahead and come back to the council. Amy, if you wouldn't mind doing a roll call vote, please.
Sure, Councilmember Berlant.
Aye. Amara.
Yes.
Dowden Calvillo.
Aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
And Mayor Spokley.
Yes. Chief, thank you very much for all your efforts on that item. We definitely appreciate it. And moving on our calendar, next up is public comment. This is a time provided so that the public may speak to the council on any item not on the agenda. Please make your comments as brief as possible. The council cannot act on items not included on the agenda. However, the items will automatically refer to staff. Council members shall have an option to speak for 30 seconds on any item not on the agenda at this time. And I'll go ahead and start us out. I do have one item that John and I got to speak about in our weekly meeting this morning. And that's the idea of us getting back into in-person meetings as a council. Ironically, or maybe the timing was perfect, but our city clerk, Amy, sent out a note to all of us kind of indicating some work that she's been doing behind the scenes, which is great, to kind of create this hybrid approach to meetings moving forward so that we can broaden our participation with the community. And I think those efforts certainly should and need to continue to move forward. Amy, thank you for kind of taking the lead on that. But as that gets developed and some of the technology details get worked through down at City Hall, I do want to target a date where we can move forward and start the in-person meetings at City Hall. I think we wait and lag and time this to work with Amy's efforts to create these hybrids so we can again do the Zoom meetings while still doing the in-person meetings. But if that creates a situation where we've got installations that have to occur and TVs that have to be set up and additional cameras, whatever it may be, I would prefer, or I would like the council to consider picking a date where we can actually start doing our in-person meetings. It will take a little coordination with the efforts that Amy and maybe others at City Hall are working on to try to coordinate the hybrid approach. But I would like to, on our next council agenda, have an item for council discussion to pick a date. Maybe it's the second meeting in June, which would be after the June 15th date that the governor gave us. But we need to try to get back to some normalcy as soon as possible. So that's what I'd like to see on our next council item for our council agenda, John, for discussion, so we can set the date and move forward with it. In the meantime, we all know that Amy's working on the hybrid program, so we'll hopefully see if we can make those rollouts consistent with each other. But if not, I do want to get back into an in-person meeting for the council. So that was my item. Anybody else have items they want to talk about? Councilmember Lang.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to quickly recognize that I was able to attend over the weekend a informal celebration. Brad Weston, a longtime Auburn business owner, former president of the chamber, as well as the Downtown Business Association, who, as you know, passed away in 2020, obviously Jackie's father. And while it was outdoors and while it was very informal, there were a lot of familiar faces spread out, and just wanted to acknowledge to the group that there was a very good showing of our community to pay their respects and celebrate with a little bit of laughter the contributions that Brad brought to Auburn. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other? I see Alice has her hand up.
Yes, so I just wanted to announce that there have been several endurance events. I think that John had mentioned Formidable that occurred, but we had the American River Classic, and we've had several. So, and there are more in the pipeline. So looking forward to bringing folks back to utilize the canyon for our endurance competitions, both on horse and on foot. And even, I don't know about the Auburn Triathlon, but Western States is on the schedule, the Tempest Cup and so forth. So very exciting to see that we're able to move forward in that with those types of activities in the Auburn State Recreation area. So good news on that.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? All right, Amy, we'll go ahead and move to public comment. Do we have any public comment this evening?
Once again, I just checked live and we have not received public comment.
All right, I'll go ahead and close public comment and we'll move on to council business. First item up is the bond purchase agreement and preliminary official statement for issuance of pension obligation bonds. John, I think you were going to start this one off.
Yeah, hopefully Andy's on, or I can just take this. But for the council's consideration, we have been moving towards the issuance of some pension obligation bonds. The council's done a couple of things to this date. Number one, give us direction, and that was done in the late fall. We have assembled a team for this. Additionally, we have moved forward with some policies. Tonight is a really important step because it does really two things. Number one is the council approves the overall bond purchase agreement. That's a critical document for basically the sale of the bonds, and we also have the preliminary official statements. So why don't I kind of turn it over to Andy, who I hope is on the call if he's going to take it. And
yeah, he's here.
Okay, why don't I turn it over to Andy and he can walk you through it.
Good evening,
Okay,
Andy.
great. Thank you, John. Mayor, members of the council. For the record, Andy Heath, the city's finance director. As John mentioned, the purpose of this item tonight is to approve a bond purchase agreement, and I'll explain what that is, and a preliminary official statement prior to going to market for the pension obligation bond that's been on the docket for probably the last 4 or 5 months, and we've had several conversations about this and what this looks like moving forward. Just by way of history, on December 14th last year, your council approved the issuance of a pension obligation bond and the initiation of a judicial validation action. That validation action actually did receive a default judgment from Placer County Superior Court on April 15th, and subsequent to a 30-day appeal period, which expires on May 17th, 2021, those bonds can be sold. So we expect to market the bonds shortly after the May 17th date, which is currently in the schedule. Some other background, as we've discussed before, our current CalPERS unfunded actuarial accrued liability is just over $20 million, $20.4 million. And that liability is being amortized by CalPERS at about at 7% annually, which is the CalPERS discount rate. We expect total pension payments related to the UAL. In addition to the current pension obligation bonds, the city still has about 5 years to pay on, to range from $2 million to $2.3 million over the next 7 years. So you can see that outside of the normal cost that the city pays for pensions for its existing employees, we are still paying $2 to $2.3 million in unfunded liability CalPERS related costs over the next 7 years. This bond is expected to reduce that amount by fixing an interest rate and getting into a financing mechanism to reduce the overall cost. We do have the ability to issue a bond to achieve several objectives. One of those objectives is fiscal sustainability, where we will create budgetary predictability. As I mentioned, we'll have a fixed stream of payments. So rather than being subject to the whims of CalPERS and the various changes that they bring forth on a very abnormal basis from year to year, in addition to being subject to the investment rate that CalPERS actually ends up making from year to year, we will have fiscal sustainability by having budgetary predictability in what our payment stream will be. We'll have near-term savings, the level payments to create near-term cash flow and add that back to the budget. The lower overall assumed interest rate is expected to be, at this point in time, 3 to 3.75%. For the bond, and that is a fixed rate versus the 7% that CalPERS amortizes the unfunded liability at now. And then we'll increase our funding ratio to between 90 and 100%. The goal is to really work with the team to make sure that because CalPERS is having a good year this year, we don't know what it's actually going to end up being by the end of June, but it will be good if things keep going the way that they are, is to really mitigate the risk of having a pension fund that is more than 100% funded, otherwise known as super funded. So we'll be working with them to really size this bond issue before we go out to market to make sure that we're not getting into that super funded scenario once those investment earnings from the current year are added back 2 years from now. The documents that you're being asked to approve tonight include the bond purchase agreement, otherwise known as a BPA. And this is essentially an agreement between the city and the city's underwriter, which is Hilltop Securities, whereby the underwriter agrees to purchase these bonds from the city and then make them available through a public or a private offering. So it's basically just a mechanism to move the bonds so that they can be sold by the underwriter. And then on top of that, we're asking your council to approve a preliminary official statement, otherwise known as a POS, that is essentially a prospectus for the deal that details all of the financial specifics associated with the city, and that way the city has good credit, and then other critical information concerning the bonds themselves. So this is just like a huge investment prospectus. It tells people why they should be buying these bonds and how secure these bonds ultimately will end up being given the city's good credit. The current savings under a given scenario, which is outlined in the staff report, we outlined a 24-year restructuring with a 1% escalator for each year, and then a linear decline in debt service payments, beginning with the anticipated reduction in the current amortization schedule prepared by CalPERS. Under this scenario, which we think is the most advantageous, the city would achieve an estimated savings of just under $540,000 annually from fiscal 22, fiscal 21-22, all the way through fiscal 26-37. So you can see there's a significant amount of savings that will accrue to the city, $540,000 over the next 15 years. Of that amount, about 88% of that will accrue to the general fund. So again, the general fund will experience considerable savings in the near term. Ultimately, through the whole bond issue itself, a total of about $5.58 million is estimated to be saved over the entire term of the bond. With the schedule, what we currently have on tap right now is a week from today. We will be doing a rating agency presentation with Standard & Poor's to achieve that rating for the bonds themselves, and ultimately, hopefully get a very good rating that reduces the level of interest rate that the city will ultimately pay on the bonds. And then the goal again is to sell the bonds once the validation action is past its appeal period, sometime during the week of May 17th. So I will stop there and answer any questions your council may have.
Thank you very much, Andy. Appreciate that report. I'll go ahead and open it up to council questions. Who wants to go first? I see Alice's real hand up this time. Alice?
Yes, just really quickly, thank you. I had an opportunity to read through this report actually on my flight over earlier. So what I wanted to ask is, you may have just already told us this, but when do you expect that the bonds would be sold? Did you give us that schedule, Andy?
When do I expect that they will be sold?
Yes.
Sometime the week of May. Sometime after May 17th, which is when the appeal period for the validation action closes.
Got it. Okay, thank you. I really didn't have any questions after reviewing this. I do have a lot of comments, but that was just really the only technical question that I had. Thank you.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the council? All right, I do not have any questions myself. As usual, typical, very nice report. Thank you, Andy and John, for that. Amy, do we have any public comments on this item?
We do not.
No public comments. I'll go ahead and close public comment, bring it back to the council for additional comments. It sounded like, Alice, you had some additional comments. I see hands going up.
Yes, I did. I'm really pleased to see this finally on our agenda at this point. We've been pursuing this. This is something that I have been really spearheading since the campaign, when Andy and I had an opportunity to sit down and talk about this unfunded liability. And I'm really excited about this. We can have our stable payments with the interest rate. We achieved this almost $540,000 savings a year. We know we've got a $700,000 hole with our firefighter budget, so that helps. So just really pleased to see this, very excited to see this on the agenda. To me, this is a win-win, really. It's a win-win for the city. I think it's a win-win for investors, and it's just really smart. We don't fund it at 100% just in case we need that little wiggle room. We've already got our unfunded liability reserve set up. We need to continue ensuring that there are funds in that as we build our budget and talk about that in May, just to ensure that we can cover any overages, as Andy has said. but very pleased to see this and very excited about it. So, and I'm ready to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I saw Councilwoman Amara's hand up.
Thank you. So yes, we've been working on this and discussing it, and you have laid out an excellent plan for us, Andy. I feel very confident that this is the right thing to do for our city. It's going to result in a significant savings for us. And at this time, we have to look into every opportunity to save money and make smart investments. And this is, for me, this is just something that we, again, have to support because it's good for our city, and it results in a very significant savings with the risk, as you said, is not significant. You're looking into the super funding issue, and I have confidence. I know a lot of cities are doing this, and so I'm very pleased. So I support it.
Thank you. Councilwoman Riddell Harris, did I see your hand go up? Nope.
I agree with what everyone's been saying.
Okay. Councilman Berlant?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echo the comments made by my colleagues. And Andy, there are a lot of things you are good at, and pension payments and projections, I know is your specialty, and many may not realize the benefit in our community that we get from your knowledge and your specialty in this entire state on this subject. And to come back to us with a solid plan that not only brings in potentially over $500,000 in savings annually, but I think all the little elements that Councilwoman down in Calvillo, listed off, that really makes this a thorough plan that ensures that regardless of where the market goes, we're not overfunding this. So we're, this is makes a stable payment for something that's very complicated. Pensions are a very complicated process. People think that this is just free money to government workers for them to live off in retirement, and that's not really the case. It's part of their overall benefit package that they too pay into, but ensuring that we have stabilized our costs, like in a stable format, like the councils who initially approved the pension, the obligation originally. This really just kind of gets us cleaned up from the new state requirements and some of the changes in the market since those promises were made. And so, again, I just can't thank you enough and can't stress enough the fact that by doing this, we are making a huge savings that this council now will be able to reinvest in our community. So thank you, Andy, for your efforts.
You're welcome. And I do echo all the comments that we've heard here tonight from my fellow council members. I do want to just make one comment. I've had a couple of folks in our community, a couple of our residents ask questions about the costs for this program. And sure, there absolutely are costs, and consultants need to be paid for their efforts. But at the end of the day, the total savings that we're going to realize based on present value of money is that nearly $5.2 million over the life of these bonds. So thank you, Andy. Thank you, John, for pushing this forward. Thank you for fairly quickly getting this thing back in front of us for this action. I'm excited to see it. We do have a pension reserve that we've set aside some dollars. And one thing's for certain is the pension obligations and liabilities and changes will be continual. So this creates a little stability in the program, and that is greatly needed. So thank you for that. Appreciate it. I'll go ahead and come back to Amy to see if we have any public comment on this item. Oh, I already did that. Sorry. We'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I will move by resolution that we confirm the issuance of the pension obligation bonds and approve the official statement and bond purchase agreement and related actions as proposed.
Second.
Amy, if you would please do a roll call vote.
Councilmember Berlant.
Aye.
Amara.
Yes.
Don Calvillo.
Aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
And Mayor Spokely.
Yes. Thank you, Andy. Great job as always. Appreciate it.
Council.
Next up on our agenda is our budget workshop. This is workshop number 4, I believe, for the council. John, I'll go ahead and turn this over to you. We're going to go over our capital improvement program that's relatively new for us. I mean, we had it separately in our different enterprise funds. You're kind of consolidating it all into a citywide CIP. So I'm looking forward to this presentation.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, thank you. And this is the 4th budget workshop that the council's focused on. And I will share with you probably it is one of the most important aspects of what we do. One of the things that is very real about cities is that we are physical. We are brick and mortar. And every year as the council considers the spending of the city, most of, at least half of all the expenditures that the city makes goes into capital infrastructure. So let me bring up a presentation, and tonight you're going to get a team presentation, and I will share with you that I think tonight probably this is some of the best work that I've seen come out of our staff since I've been the manager here. A capital improvement program is very foundational. What it does is it literally reaches the span of all of our critical infrastructure in town: streets, traffic lights, sidewalks, curbs, gutter, the sewer system, the storm drainage system, our physical buildings, our equipment that we provide for public safety. The way that we manage our infrastructure is one of the most strategic things that we do, because it determines the vitality and the quality of life that we have here. As people look at the overall infrastructure, it becomes the face of our city. When people drive down our streets, they look at that quality. And for the most part, it represents all the essential services. On half of this slide is the spreadsheet. Those are available online with the agenda report and in the packet. So tonight we're going to cover in the overall program, there are 7 categories, 5 of which the council has seen before, 2 are brand new. The airport, which I think is a real jewel for this community, our sewer and wastewater, transportation, which represents all of our streets and sidewalks and that supported infrastructure. We have a transit system, buses and facilities that go along with that. The public safety and our general facilities. This is everything from including our fire trucks and our fire stations to City Hall and to other infrastructure that is around the city. We've added 2 key areas into it, which I think will become some of the most important that we look to position and plan for. The first is the idea of energy, the idea of backbone infrastructure within our grid. As we transition to a more electrical economy, our grid, our investment in renewables, as well as the infrastructure that we provide for an emerging electric vehicle fleet is really important. And then broadband. As we're on tonight, people are online. We are doing this via computer, and our ability as a community to have quality broadband services as we navigate 5G, 6G, satellite technology all comes into that. The program that we're proposing, 6 years, almost $32 million. Capital budgeting actually falls into a number of actual budgeting areas. Most of this, and there will be the development of many of these documents coming over the next couple of years. The idea of a major projects financing program, the MPFP, that is actually a state required document. AB 1600 allows you to charge fees and collect monies. Without one of those, you really can't do it. And one thing that we're going to be doing rapidly is updating ours and putting it there. There are mandated allocations as you receive various types of money from the state. You, as a council, approve many types of receipts of funding. Grants, the idea of having an overall asset management program. All 7 of those categories that I've described are going to include the need to literally pipe by pipe and manhole by manhole to be managed in some type of an overall program. We have new development, and then we have a lot of projects that happen with many of our partners. 2 weeks ago, we had our 3x3 with Placer County, and one of the key things we talked about are joint projects, and those things fold into a capital program. In the spreadsheets that the council has, there are some key elements in that plan. 4 of them involve the basic breakdown of each one of the categories. The idea of planning. You have to plan. You have to identify the projects, because ultimately that planning will lead to projects, and those projects will lead to timing and funding, which you'll do. One thing that people will tell you is, wow, government's really big. Well, I'll tell you, there's nobody more regulated than local government than us. So the idea that we are budgeting for overall compliance for many of our infrastructure is critical. In it, each one of the projects are in there. Those are the deliverables. And then the facilities and the support infrastructure to all of this, everything from traffic lights to street lights to the things that we do around the city. The future will, so in this year's budget, we're really focusing on 2 things that the council's getting. They're getting that spreadsheet with the 6-year forecast of expenditures. We will be following up with a more complete breakdown of all the funding. So this year, you're going to get the spreadsheets that describe those. As we move forward, that spreadsheet is going to become alive for you. The idea of a vertically integrated and linked information system that literally, as you go to that spreadsheet, within a year, you're going to be able to click on that spreadsheet and go to the actual project budget sheet and see what that is. The second thing is the project budget sheets. Right now, a lot of these projects are conceptual. The reality is as we get ready to move towards all of them, you'll see the actual project sheets that have the breakdown for all the costs that people are looking at. And then finally, everything is going to move into the idea of an asset management system. The progression of projects as we move into this over the years. First is planning. The idea of master plans, sewer master plans, storm drain master plans, pavement management systems, all those things all fall into some type of a master planning. And then financial planning, the idea that we identify the revenues. And one of the biggest decisions you as a council will make is the direction on the allocation of funding, because in many cases, this will go out for up to, in this case, 6 years. Prioritization of projects, very important. It has to be both strategic and practical. For you as a council, you're going to figure out, okay, which streets or sewer lines do we want to do first and why? You allocate the funding, we schedule, and then we implement. What I'd like to do now is just introduce our city engineer, Chris Chiardella. And Chris, why don't you go ahead and go through some of the project implementation stuff that you have.
All right, thank you, John. Good evening. So a few common themes throughout our city infrastructure. A couple general items under planning, compliance, and capital projects. So under planning, the real push is the asset management program using collected field data from inspection, including evaluations and further analysis. This will lead to updating our GIS with new locations and data accordingly. And ultimately, this will work towards generating master plans for the airport, roadways, sanitary sewers, and storm drain sewer infrastructure. Compliance goes along with a lot of this very infrastructures and includes permitting for industrial stormwater, municipal stormwater, and wastewater discharges. For capital projects, they're generally split between two basic types, linear and location-based projects. Next slide, please. Okay, so a few examples, highlights from the overall capital improvement program. Airport projects. First one on the list is one in progress, working with Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, is the Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan Update. This is really incorporating the updates from the city's 2018 FAA-approved airport layout plan, primarily putting in a runway extension in the 10-plus year outlook at our airport. Next one up, which will go with other infrastructure, is rating, analysis, and an overall plan for our pavement maintenance program at the airport. So this will be utilizing the asset management program and having pavement condition indexes provided, really inspected and provided. Ongoing project right now is design for the helicopter parking area project. That should be finished in this next fiscal year, and initiating the construction phase in that fiscal year and the following one in 22-23. Next slide, please. So some general overview for our wastewater treatment plant projects. We have the large one going on right now, sludge dewatering upgrades project that was just advertised, bids were opened, and there'll soon be a council action coming up here in the next month, awarding that to a low apparent responsive and responsible bidder. And design was completed back in January, and we anticipate the construction phase to be initiated in early fiscal year 21-22 with completion in the following fiscal year. So generally 2 construction seasons or during the summer this year and next. Another ongoing project is our Vista de Val sewer pump station improvement project. Construction phase is in progress, and really we'll be finalizing some of the site improvements and restoration with completion by June of this year. What's in preliminary design currently, and really will ramp up to design in next fiscal year, is the Diamond Ridge Sewer Pump Station project. Very similar to Vista de Val. It's really rehabilitating an existing lift station up to current standards, including backup powers, wet wells, and electrical controls, and above ground quick connect. So the design phase should be completed next fiscal year, with the construction phase to follow in the next in fiscal year 22-23. A couple projects for the linear sewer collection system include the 510 High Street sewer rehabilitation, which is about approximately 150 linear feet of sewer collection system within the public right-of-way and within easements at 510 High Street. And this is really in collaboration or in timing with associate development at the site. The Borland sewer realignment is the city's portion of a project in a larger project, the Caltrans roundabout project at the intersection of Borland and Highway 49. And this is an opportunity for the city to have some sewer lines rehabilitated in the area, and as part of a larger project at a lower cost. And ultimately, the work is to be performed by a Caltrans construction contractor through a utility agreement between the city and Caltrans. This will be an item taken to City Council probably in late May or early June. The construction phase is anticipated to start by the end of this calendar year. And that wraps up my items, and I will like to introduce and pass this along to Menjel Dean, our transit project manager, as he goes over transportation projects.
Thanks, Chris. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Transportation infrastructure is a fundamental component to the city of Auburn. Not only is it used for transporting our citizens, but it should be looked at as one of the primary ways the city can support economic development. The city's infrastructure is comprised of 4 key areas, as you see on the screen there: roadways, walkways, cycling infrastructure, and transit stations and similar facilities. With a total of 67.5 centerline miles, which residents and visitors depend on heavily. The street system is also instrumental in the delivery of the city's public safety component, which would be severely compromised without dependable roadway network. In 2013, it was recommended the city adopt a 20-year pavement overlay cycle requiring somewhere in the range of 3.5 to 4 miles of roadway be paved annually. at a cost of approximately $870,000. This CIP list has adopted similar strategy. In addition, this capital improvement plan incorporates additional funding for roadway reconstruction and stormwater system repairs, as well as monies for roadway preservation projects that would include surface sealing, like the project that will be kicking off late spring, early summer, as well as ADA ramps, which is a project we just wrapped up, and we are getting ready to do some scab-in paving for that and other related improvements. As far as the pavement condition index, the city's public works staff will be soliciting proposals from qualified right-of-way asset data collection consultants, focusing primarily on the city's pavement condition and stormwater systems. The intent is to conduct a condition survey of this system networks and provide technical support for updating the city's pavement management system as well as the stormwater system. The information gathered will be integrated into the city's existing GIS layers, which will aid in the planning, compliance, and capital improvement project implementation, and as well as project tracking, which would be consistent with the CIP plan. At this time, I'd like to introduce the council to Christina Schaefer, who is our city's finance staff.
Thank you, Mendel. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. For the record, Christina Schaefer, accountant. So the main 8 sources of the revenue for the CIP projects will be subventions per capita distribution, regional allocations, block grants, financing, grants, impact fees, general funds, federal funding, and special revenues. Next slide, please. As you see in your spreadsheet, we have listed for you the upcoming and requested capital improvement projects for the next 5 fiscal years for each fund. The major airport project will be the on-call aviation engineering and new helicopter parking area, which will be funded by the FAA grant capital funds, which are available after fixed operating costs have been paid and fund balance. For the sewer, we have the wastewater treatment, sludge dewatering, and linear infrastructure of the annual collection system rehab, which will be funded by the rate and connection fees and fund balance. The annual street overlay project and storm drain rehab are funded by the gas tax, SB1, a portion of the LTF revenue, and general fund. The transit capital projects, including buses and facility improvements, primary sources will be LTF, STA, 5311, SGR, LC Top, and for the fire apparatus replacement and police facility upgrade will be supported by the general fund. And lastly, the Corporation Yard Solar Project will be grant funded by the PCA, PCD, and FEP. Next slide, please. For financial tracking, the expenditures and reimbursements for each project will be tracked through the accounting software as well as a shared Excel file that you see before you. Thank you.
Mayor and Council, if the Council has any question on these things, I will share with you that this isn't easy just to kind of throw it all together. And it actually has taken a lot of work. I give Chris, Mengel, and Christina a lot of credit. They've actually really bared down and put together the worksheets that you have. But there's still a lot of work to do. As we move forward, if you look in the earlier years, there's a lot of planning that's going on. I think Mengel can share with you that we are literally on the verge of going out to bid on bringing in somebody to put together the pavement condition index, which will bleed into a pavement management system. Overall, as we identify all of our funding, the idea of forecasting out throughout multiple fiscal years is all going to be happening as we go. But first things first, this has been an opportunity to try and organize everything into a central location where you as the council or anybody in the public can have an opportunity to go to one document, find out where the priorities in infrastructure are, what the expenditures are. In this case, you look at $32 million over 6 years. That's a lot of money. But even more so, it gives you the opportunity to start gaining a vision on where you want to go with projects. There's a lot of things that the council has talked about. Where do bike projects go? Where do pedestrian projects go? Where do beautification projects go? You know, one of the keenest sources of money out of the Sacramento Area Council of Governments are things like Safe Routes to School projects, which is just nothing but money to throw at building sidewalks and doing those types of things. Our ability as a community to define our infrastructure, put together multi-year plans, aids in getting funding for all of that. Because at the end of the day, a well-organized city is one that is looked most favorably upon by any type of funding agency. So I'd just like to pass along my kudos to the staff for their work. And I'd like to ask if the council has any questions on any of this.
I see Councilman Berlant's hand went up first, so we'll start with him.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have some comments as well, but I'll just say I'm commentary-wise and questions here, blown away at this report. And maybe it's because we've never had something so thorough. The only question I have, and then again, I have reserved some time for brief comment, is besides this meeting here for the council and for the public that are watching, what, John, do you foresee as future involvement for public input into the plan or public comments? Are tonight, are we approving this plan, or is there a future ability to incorporate concerns or ideas that members of the public may prioritize that we tonight as a council don't have to provide you feedback? So just looking for what's the future public involvement or input into the plan going into the future.
So there are a number of projects that are already in the pipe. They're already going out. But if you look at the overall plan, literally in every single one of these areas, the public's going to have the ability to bring input. There are many things that are coming back. The pavement management plan, the various master plans, every single one of those is going to put sunshine on everything that we're doing. So these plans will all be coming back in different forms. The council will actually be approving this with the annual budget. But it's like I said, this is but a beginning for all of this. And as Menjel and Chris kind of outlined, there are the various plans and things that we're working on. Those will all come back before the council in a workshop format. So the public's going to have plenty of bites on this apple, I think.
Great, thank you, John. Again, Mr. Mayor, I have a few comments, but that concludes my questions.
Thank you very much. I saw Rachel, Councilwoman Riddle Harris's hand go up next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to ask kind of a similar question, but what will be the process for adding things to this plan? Because I know that I'm looking at a couple sections that are probably going to grow over the years, and this is a living, I've worked on CIPs before in other organizations, and it's kind of a living document that you're always kind of adding to and reprioritizing. And so I'm just wondering what your thoughts were around adding to this and reprioritizing this over time and how that will work.
I can just tell you absolutely. Many of the projects are in the pipe on some of these things. There are some projects though that are already approved. As an example, some of the airport elements, those are already out the door. The sludge dewatering project is coming to a council meeting like next for funding. But for many of these things, the prioritization is going to flow 100% into the adoption of actual master plans. And we aren't going to try and build Rome in the first versions of this. We are absolutely going to bring this in bite-sized pieces for the council on various things. The biggest items are going to come down the road. as we look to do more sophisticated projects and for the council to identify larger vision items for the community. So those things will come down. So first things first are what we've got going. We will take it in bite-sized pieces, but one of the things that this document will absolutely be able to do is it will create master plans on multiple scales for the council to bring vision on a long-term view for Auburn.
Great. That's all I had for questions. I have some comments later.
Great, thank you. I saw Councilwoman Dunn-Calvillo's hand up. After that.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you. I'll lower my hand. John, thank you very much for putting this together. I think that it's a long time coming that we have a CIP, so I really do appreciate that you prepared this for the city. And it really is a comprehensive document, and it really does help us moving forward. Just a quick couple of questions. I know that we have the pavement management program, and we're going to be doing that inventory. But we also have under facilities the sidewalk repairs for both commercial and residential. We've earmarked some monies for those activities. But have we done a comprehensive sidewalk repair plan lately? And should we not include that as part of our planning process? Because there's two things. First, we know that really the sidewalks are the responsibility of the property owners, most of them. There are certainly some that are the city's responsibilities, but most people don't realize that outside their business or their home, that sidewalk is their responsibility. Now, with that said, I certainly encourage our participation in helping to address those issues, especially where we have public safety threats, cracks and things where people could trip or fall or things of that nature. So I'm assuming that the monies you have earmarked for those are really for the most severe of the issues. But so really two questions. One, do we have that sidewalk improvement plan, or are we going to develop that? And number two, are you looking to work with the individual folks that are responsible for those sidewalks in helping them to repair with these dollars?
I'll address just a little bit, and then maybe I'll throw this to Menjel or Chris if they want to chime in. So when we talk about streets, we talk from the very back of the sidewalk all the way out into the middle of the street and storm drainage. That's what a street is. As far as there's a correlation between road work that we do, curbs and gutters, and the corners that we do. So yes, there's a give and take on some of this stuff. Menjel actually has some projects that are coming forward. So Menjel, why don't you talk about what you're doing right now and maybe give a little insight as to how we'll move this thing forward.
Absolutely. Thanks, John. Councilwoman Alice Dunn-Calvillo, you're absolutely correct. So the funds that you see earmarked here for sidewalk repairs, both commercial and residential, are of course for the portions of the sidewalk we find that we think are just dangerous or hazardous that we should address almost immediately, because the last thing we want to do is leave something unsafe out there. And John is also correct in stating that part of the PCI that we're going to be going out here to solicit, to get bids for, is going to include that sidewalk. So though it may not be the city's responsibility to fix that sidewalk, we're going to identify where the problem areas are so we can work with the property owners and the business owners to get those corrected. I hope that answers your question.
It does, and it would be good when we talk about those repairs and so forth, just to have just like we will with the streets, what really are the most significant, so that council is clear on what we anticipate being on that schedule and when. So I appreciate that. I know that I get a series of questions from folks about sidewalks and who's going to fix them and when and so forth. So as much information as we can have on that would be great. Also, with regards to transportation projects, we do have ADA transition plan. It's zeroed out, but I know that we are doing ADA work. That's that transition where the curbs are to the street and so forth. So I was just wondering why that's zero. I know we're doing it ongoing. Is it because we're incorporating that into the streets, or what are we doing with those?
So that's another great question. So the ADA transition plan that's been laid out for the city incorporates quite a bit of the sidewalks and the parks and things that we need to do. In an effort to actually get an accurate number, why that's 0 right now? Because when we go to this PCI, soliciting bids for this PCI, we're hoping to get something more accurate as to what it's going to cost to upgrade some of the areas where the city would have to touch. Staff didn't want to throw a number at this because we didn't want to guess with this. We want this document to be a valid, living, working document that we could actually turn to for when we need information. Right now, we don't know, and so that's why that's 0. Like John mentioned, this document is going to come before council again. So at that point, you could expect to see some numbers within that area.
Great, thank you very much. I appreciate hearing that. That's clear. I appreciate that. The last thing I just wanted to ask about is, and John and I kind of talked about this in our meeting on last week, and that was with regards to the landfill. I know, we have a lot of costs there. It's not all capital projects, but we do have identified $50,000. And I just wanted to, that's for compliance cost? But I mean, is that a realistic number? I mean, because I know our compliance costs are higher than that. So I just kind of wanted to know, where we're going with that particular figure. Or this is a working document, so clearly we know we are going to have some estimated. There's some larger costs down the road, and we just kind of still waiting to see what those are going to be. That's why it's empty in those other columns for future years.
Absolutely, that's a great question. Again, I'll let Chris Chardella chime in on this one, as he knows a little bit more about the compliance costs for the landfill than I do.
Yeah, so these initial budget and costs identified here is really for some of the ongoing outside consultant work and compliance issue currently, and we haven't fully estimated the short-term and long-term capital costs. John, I'm not sure if you have anything else to add as well.
Yeah, I'll just say that $50,000 is just a little drop in a project that's just going to be the gift that keeps on giving. So I can just tell you it's going to cost more than $50,000. That's just for them to tell us a couple of little things, but expect that project's going to grow a little bit.
Absolutely, and I totally get that. I just wanted to understand a little bit more, so we're looking at really the $50,000 in the planning phase and getting some additional information on what our overall costs are going to be later. Because this is a working document, we will have numbers, and I wanted to say that too for the council's sake, is that we should not anticipate that $50,000 is going to solve anything. So just for the planning. Those were the only questions that I had. And again, thanks so much, John, for putting this together. Incredibly helpful. And looking forward to seeing that pavement study as well, the street improvement study that incorporates the sidewalk improvements as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Amara.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I've had a couple of questions here. Yeah, I'm very interested in the sidewalks as well. So I support fixing. Some of the sidewalks are really are very dangerous. And so I appreciate that plan that we have going forward. So I'm getting an echo here.
You're muted, Sandy.
Having a problem juggling all this paper. First of all, thank you, John and Christina and Menjel and Chris for working on this. This is a very clear document, working document that is just excellent, and I really appreciate it. What I would like to know from Christina is where. You've mentioned so many acronyms, and I won't make you go through all those. But I appreciate that. One of them that I'm especially interested, though, is the AB 1600, the mitigation fees for trees. Is that buried in here somewhere, Christina or John or someone? Because I'm very interested to see where we can put that in terms of supporting the tree project for High Street.
So, Christina, let me take a crack at this. Not all revenues that we have are included in what you have right now. What we've done is we've identified active project areas, but the impact fees that were paid for those is not in here. However, what we are working on is we will bring an overall spreadsheet that will identify all the revenues in forecasted fiscal years. You think, wow, how hard is it just to list all the money? It's really hard because literally the spreadsheet becomes a kaleidoscope of different angles on how do you do it. And I think, as Christina was working on this, we work to be cautious because we don't want to give the council anything that somebody's going to hold up someday and go, see, right here. So we need to make sure the revenues are accurate. So expect that when we bring all of this back to the council for the actual adoption of the CIP. You'll see the money, and you'll also see that there's a lot of it that's not being allocated.
So yeah, so clearly then you've identified revenue for the particular projects listed here on the document. And I guess speaking to that, I think I don't know if this is the time and place, but I would like to reemphasize how important trees and how trees can make our cities so attractive and healthy and inviting and I think I personally would like to see maybe I guess it would be under capital projects, a line item where we incorporate the High Street project here, utilizing the AB 1600 money. So I think that's something that I would like to see incorporated into the plan so that we can get going. We have a lot of enthusiasm and spirit and people who want to spearhead this project. So that would be one comment. The other one is I have a question under transit projects. We have, it says vehicles, and it's for 21-22, 205,000. I guess Mendel, that would be you. Is that for the purchase of electric vehicles, or do you see that? It's TS 105. Mendel?
I do see that. So right now within the city's transit fleet, we do have one bus that's required replacement. It was scheduled to be replaced 3 years ago, but because we acquired 2 electric buses, we've been able to limp it along. The city has capitalized some funds through PCTPA, along with some grant funding that the city was able to acquire. So we finally have a total of about $180,000 in grant funds to help facilitate the cost of this bus. That number there shows what the actual cost of the bus is. The most of that cost is going to come from grant funds. The other is going to be from local transportation funds. But yes, it is for the purchase of a new bus. Is
it an electric bus, or is it just going to be just a transit bus that goes around town? It's
an electric bus. The direction that transit was given from council some years ago was to pursue clean, green energy programs for our transit infrastructure. I don't see the city staff or city purchasing a bus that isn't electric at this point. We've put in the infrastructure to corporation yard to help support this initiative. So moving forward, even our operations vehicles for transit will be electric.
Great, thank you. And Mendel, I guess on the same transportation, my question here is, yeah, we have an overlay project of about $1 million a year ongoing for the overlay, and that's for approximately 3 miles a year. Is that correct?
That is an estimated number. Some roads are going to take a little bit more to get to that $1 million mark, and some are going to take a little bit less. That was just something that came out of the 10 years road report that was comprised in 2013. I think it's a good estimate to go by, but of course we may end up doing 2 miles in some years, and we may end up doing 5 in other years, depending on the layout, depending on the width of the road, how much grinding we have to do to get the construction up to par. So it's a rough estimate, but it's a good number to go with. 3.5 to 4 miles annually. And
so we already have identified some roads with bike lanes, I believe. Is that right? I mean, I think Auburn Folsom, I think, has a bike lane. Anyway, those roads, I would like to see those roads, perhaps another line item as well, where we can have a safe, I think you and I were talking today, Menjel, and you indicated that my concern with bike lanes is that, with texting and all this opportunity, there's, it's very unsafe with the speedings of cars and that kind of thing. And I think what a lot of places are doing are the cat eye lids. I think that at least offers some opportunity and really identifies bike lanes. So I would like to see a line item whereby we have bike lanes with cat eye lids, and it can be, a project that is ongoing. And as we do the roads, we can also have bike lanes to correspond with our overlay project. Is that something that's feasible, Menjel?
No, absolutely. As part of any bid that goes out, there's usually line items for things like that. If there's a bike lane there, or if the council wishes to add a bike lane on a certain road, we can certainly incorporate rumble strips or cat eye lids that would help to alert drivers that are somewhat distracted. Yeah, that's definitely something that could be included. It can be included as a separate line item, or it could be included as a line item within the bid that goes out for the roadway projects.
Good. Okay. Well, that's something that I would be very interested in seeing. And then lastly, I know that many of us have been approached and made aware of another gem in Auburn, and that's the Carnegie Library. I think that's a project. It might go under capital projects. I think that's a project that maybe should at least be identified. There might be some funding, because it is an historical building. Since I was there when I was young, it's very historic. So it's a wonderful building, and there's a lot. Right now it's empty, and I think that's an opportunity for Auburn. So I'm not sure how the council feels about that, but I think that that's something that maybe we can line item and look into funding, and that could be a project that could be ongoing either in the near future or down the road. So
actually, that is something that we can absolutely start putting those projects together as far as future facilities to identify those. One of the things that I know that we're doing right now as part of our overall inventory of buildings for our insurance is identifying the buildings. But how about this summer? Why don't we bring back kind of a listing of some of these things? Obviously, we have the old City Hall on High Street. We have the Carnegie Library. We have other facilities for some of these things. So maybe what we'll do is in the CIP, let's just list a category called miscellaneous city facilities, and we can start putting those types of things in. The second thing that you brought up are bike lanes, pedestrian lanes. I'll share with you that Mari Salazar from SACOG, who is in charge of all of the bike and pedestrian lanes in the Sacramento region, was my intern who I said, hey, I think you need to learn how to do bike and pedestrian lanes. And now she is in charge of all of them for the SAC region. I bet you I could get her to kick in a couple of bucks for us to put together some type of a bike and pedestrian master plan for our city. So let's add some of those things in. This is going to be a very organic document for us. And as we start adding these things in, we'll keep on tracking them. But look for those things to absolutely be listed, at least categorically. They may not have any money next to them, but we can get past that for a little bit, and eventually we'll find how we'll fund some of this stuff, but we'll include it.
Okay, thank you.
All righty, thank you. I've got a few questions. I'll try to run through these quickly. John, I went back to our 2021 budget under capital expenditures and tried to correlate this spreadsheet to that with not much luck. And I guess maybe Chris or Minjel or you, John, can help me understand why they're so different. So in our last final budget, we had about $10.4 million in citywide capital projects budgeted for 2021. In the spreadsheet, it looks like we have $1.8 million is all that's been identified. Are projects, because of COVID, being pushed to next year, or are some of the items that were in our 2021 budget under capital projects not really capital projects, that it didn't make the cut for this program? What?
I can try to ease the blow on that one and try to make it make sense. So some of the projects that were already completed in 2021 weren't identified on this spreadsheet. This spreadsheet was more or less created to give what we're looking at for the future. Some projects were incorporated here, and there are ones that are still anticipated either to be done in this fiscal year or are currently being worked on. But some of the larger items that you're mentioning that have already been wrapped up didn't make the spreadsheet. Of course, if the council wishes to see a true project list for 2021 incorporated with this, we can certainly provide that.
Okay, thank you, Minjel. So I'm just going to run down the list here. Airport projects, we actually have an airport master plan that's been put together by consultants and reviewed by the FAA, and we have a list of projects that come out of that plan. Is that correct? I don't know if is that Chris? Is that correct, Chris?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And running down the list here, sewer. We certainly have an enterprise fund for sewer, but do we have a sewer master plan for the city?
Not currently.
And that's what's programmed in 22-23, I presume, the $200,000 there?
Yes, that'll be a follow-up step to really fleshing out the asset management program.
And if I might add in, you're going to see that pushed out into maybe into one additional fiscal year. One of the things that we're doing, and I really give some credit to Chris and Minjel. First things first, we need to identify our assets. And so there's going to be a lot of homework. So when you see a sewer master plan moved out one additional fiscal year, that's because we're going back and we're doing inventorying and getting all of that. Because when we bring somebody in to help us put together that plan, it's better that we've already done the homework so that they're then able to correlate it into an overall plan. So when you see the master plans that they pushed off, that is by design. It's not that we're putting them off. It's that we have other things that we need to align before we can actually move them forward.
I appreciate that, John, and Chris, Minjel. I'm not trying to be critical. I'm just trying to better understand. I again appreciate the time and energy that was spent putting this together and seeing it all in one spot. Eye-opening for me. You know, we go through the old formats for the budgets that we would work through. And yeah, there's capital projects that are all identified. That's what I mentioned, is that $10.6 or $7 million number. So no, I'm not being critical, John. I appreciate this very much. I understand the need to assess what we actually have before we can put a program together to maintain what we have. But along that same line, there has been, and I think I've asked questions in previous budget cycles, but we have lift stations, for example, that are identified for maintenance repair. These are just kind of needs improvements that we've got a facility, it's failing and breaking down more frequently than it should. So we're gonna put that on our list. Is that how these lift stations, for example, pump stations, got on the list of capital improvement projects?
So let me take a shot, and then Chris, why don't you chase in? A lift station's a couple of components. For the major parts of it, those, if we think that we have to replace a lift station or something like that, that'll fall into the capital program. Replacing the pumps and those types of things should be picked up in the O&M on an annual basis. So they'll appear two ways. One is in the operation budget each year. If the pump goes out, you got to go out and replace it. So it comes into two areas. One of the things that we will be doing is ultimately in a sewer master plan, you do forecast based on usable life on various things, major rehab and those types of things. Those will eventually fold into the capital budget on some things. We will budget, identify it, and fix it 5 years from now or whatever, whether it likes it or not. So anyway, Chris, do you have anything to follow up on that?
Yeah, it's more, it was conducted in an informal manner. My understanding previous to me coming here to the city, of cycling through lift stations that are reaching end of useful life, and we're developing maintenance and operation issues, leaking in the wet wells, backup pumps or generators not being permitted anymore or not functioning as they should, and really putting in much needed upgrades to electrical systems so we're not getting water hammer with our pumps, as well as providing a quick connect that's become a need, especially recently with some other lift stations, and as we've responded to different issues over the last couple of years.
Right. Okay, thank you for that. I do appreciate it. Chris, while I got you, the sludge dewatering project, in our budget last year, we had $3.6 million allocated for the project. Maybe I wasn't paying close enough attention to it, but if I'm reading this projection right, well, let me back up. You've got bid results in. How did we fare based on our engineers' estimates to what the bid results actually came in at, Chris? Do we have that information yet?
Yeah, we've kind of finalized the bid summary, and that's something that will be presented to council here in early May. It did come in about our low bid, approximately 10% over our engineer's estimate. And what you'll see is if you look at last year's sewers budget and previous one, really this project combines some other smaller projects to really try to deliver them more efficiently. So there is really at this point, besides the new screw press technology and building, there's a sewer bypass being put in that was needed at the plant to bypass one of the aging lift stations there that's no longer needed, and really to replace and rehabilitate the existing water pumps at our plant. And some added items, covered parking and having them available, and infrastructure for electric charging and being able to be expanded with solar, as well as some improvements needed to our oxidation ditch. So it became really a merged larger project, as each couple $100,000 project was separately budgeted that got merged into the one larger one.
The electric charging stations that you just mentioned, those must be for electric equipment used at the treatment plant, right?
Yeah, part of the overall plan and goal by 2030 or 2035, Mendel can expand on that, as all city fleet and vehicles will be required to be electric vehicles. So this is part of the initiatives where we have the opportunity where we are trenching for other utilities in the area. So try to more efficiently put in the infrastructure while we're already doing the excavation and pavement restoration.
I think that's fantastic. That makes a whole lot of sense. Back on the sludge dewatering though, we all who were on the council last year approving this budget thought that this facility, and I didn't go back and look at presentations, I just didn't have a chance to, but the cost was 3.6 million. Was that the total cost for that facility? And if so, it looks like we're at about $7.3 million now for the facility.
Yeah, part of that was really the construction hard cost at that time. And that was anticipated encumbrance of the construction contract and without these smaller projects included. What you see here before you today is kind of an all-inclusive, trying to take a holistic look at the project to include the design costs, to include the bid advertising support, to include the construction management, inspection, and design support during construction. So it's really a change with this overall plan to holistically look at the full project costs and delivering it.
So one more question, and then I'll move on to the 3.6 that we saw last time didn't have some of the extra projects that are now included with this wastewater treatment plant sludge dewatering line item here, but it didn't have the full total project costs. Is that what I heard?
Yes, it was the expected engineer's estimate for the hard cost construction contract without contingency at that time until the project was advertised and bids were opened. So this full cost here, I mean, adding the contingency of 10% is also included in this full cost before you today.
Now, okay. Mr. Merrick, moving forward, so as I've directed Mendel and Chris, I said, you got to put everything in. What the cost on these is we move forward. One of the things that each one of these projects is going to have is it's going to have a project budget sheet. And as we modernize the systems here, you'll be able to go back and see the history. So instead of you're digging through old budgets and old staff reports, a project budget sheet will show you the history on original estimations, on everything from engineering to construction. One of the things that is the reality is that some of these projects that sit for a bit have cost escalations just from normal construction costs. Over the past like 3.5, almost 4 years, construction has increased by about 1% a month. And the failure to execute on these projects in a timely manner just sees everything tick up, and just in materials alone. So a project that sits for 2.5 or 3 years is going to see a 36% escalation of costs. So one of the things, again, transparency in budgeting and the demand for performance is going to show a history of everything. So as you sit back and go, gosh, this thing 2 years ago cost, $3.5 million or whatever, you'd be able to go back and see that. It's the reason why you need to budget and then execute on all these things so that we save money on things.
And I've got a comment on that, John, and I'll save it for when we wrap up here. Couple of more questions. That 510 High Street linear project that's in this, did I hear, Chris, I think it was you, is that specific to a development project? And if so, why is the city paying for infrastructure to support a private development project?
Yes, specifically the scope of this project is the city's infrastructure that's in the public right of way and that's in the city's easement. I had mentioned the private development because as the development goes through our planners and goes through engineering and public works, we are aware of the timing of the development. So the key here is to take advantage of an opportunity when there's going to be other site work on the project. So the city can go in, do our utility work, and have the final paving restoration done as part of the development afterwards.
Okay, so this isn't a situation related to capacity from a new project?
No, not at all.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. I'm almost done, folks, sorry. Public safety facilities and general facility projects. I got down to all of the new fire trucks that are listed here, and obviously we've got to maintain, and trucks have useful lives and they have to be rotated through the fleet. But this is the first time I've seen the 6 trucks that we have to replace over the next 6 years to the tune of $3.1 million. Was this planned or programmed anywhere in the system, John? Or is this just, hey, we're looking at things and what needs to be replaced, and because we didn't really have a solid plan, this now is in the CIP?
Now, this is the first cut on all this stuff. Do we think necessarily in the next couple of years we're going to do 3.1 funded out of the general fund? No, but the idea that we do allocate into the program estimations on what we think, and then as far as the fire department, because we identify the need on these things, there are various types of federal sources of money that we can then go for on these things. But at the end of the day, if we don't have the money, we're not going to buy it.
Okay, that's it for my questions. I do have comments. So we'll go ahead and Amy, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not.
No public comment. All right, I guess I'll bring it back to council for questions. Who would like to, comments? I see Councilmember Lance's hand went up first. I see your second, Rachel. Daniel?
Mr. Mayor, I'll just reiterate my comment that I threw in during questions. I am super impressed with the work that staff put into this document. Mr. Mayor, you yourself have been asking for something like this for years. And instead of being tired of hearing you ask for it over and over, I'm so appreciative of John just kind of really grabbing the bull by the horns and putting something together. Yes, there needs to be some changes. It's a growing evergreen document that we can continue to build upon. But this really is, in my mind, the first time we've taken lots of other plans that we have, ADA, retrofits, the pavement, all these other ones. It's still, some of those even need to be updated, but we've kind of packaged it up into one bigger document that we can see all the different capital things that need to be done. And I'm just super appreciative of the time that staff put in, Chris, Mengel, even Christina. But John, thank you. 2 elements I just want to reiterate. Councilwoman Amara asked about trees, and just wanted to follow up, ask as a question because I didn't hear a response on it. John, do you see the need and the discussion that I know Councilwoman Amara and I brought to the council prior to your arrival, probably a more holistic discussion about where we see redevelopment, and maybe that's not the right word, but tree development on some of our streets and some of our highway corridors, for example. Do you see that in the CIP, or where would you see that discussion that she raised and that we've raised in meetings in the past?
Yeah, and bottom line, we need to wrap those types of things into some type of a master plan. And part of the homework that we're still working on right now, I actually have our city planner assembling all the previous master plans. to figure out what we have, but you need to consolidate that in because you know what? Trees are awesome. They add a huge value in so many ways to a community, but you need infrastructure going to those. That remember, the best day is when all the volunteers are out there planting the trees. The worst day is when you start getting the phone calls of all the dead trees because you didn't have water. So you need to be strategic in how we do these, but we will include them. The idea of pedestrian master plans is absolutely something that we will bring forward and we will work on. And that's where all that's going to end up.
Great. The other thing I didn't really see in this plan that I would be an advocate for us to look at it, including are retrofits or upgrades to our sidewalks and our streets to incorporate some of the temporary outdoor dining that we have built and to either provide longer term strategies for enhanced outdoor dining. I know we've had some proposals that I don't want to spend too much time here discussing the street change that downtown is proposing, but I think that some of those upgrades probably should be included in this plan. Just thought of that now. So sorry, we didn't get a chance to bring that up when you and I met on it. And then lastly, I would just echo Councilman Amara's notion of adding some funding into the plan for some of the historic buildings, the Carnegie Library, as well as even City Hall. I know that there's some thoughts that the Endurance Capital Committee is working on. And so I think or the Chamber of Commerce is working on that. That we really should put some planning into this document, so we're capturing those. And then I'll thirdly add that I also agree with Councilwoman Downing Calvillo's comments about making sure that we're in this document, including more money aside for the upgrades that may be required out at the landfill. But again, overall, super appreciative. Menjel, awesome work. Chris, Christina, again, very, very appreciative. So that concludes my comments. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councilman Riddell Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All of this is music to my ears since I have a history of being a strategic planner. I love plans. And so this is one of the things that made me want to run for city council, was to get more organized and have more plans together on what we're doing long-term, and this is all great. So I love all this. I'm really excited about the energy solutions portion and the broadband portion, because I think those are going to be critical in the future, making sure that our citizens have the ability to have access to the internet and have it be consistently up is helpful to them. And it's also, we're finding out that it's even more critical for our kids these days. So I think that that's something that we need to make sure we're thinking about. And I think that's great that we added a whole different category for that. But obviously there's things to add into that category because there's not a lot in there yet. So this is a living document. We'll continue to add things to it. I love that we're talking about asset management programs. I've worked on those in the past. We're planning ahead. Being able to plan makes it so that we can find the money and find the grants and apply for the grants. And I think that all of that is really key for us, because we can't afford everything in that plan. So we need to be able to look forward and apply for grants so we can get that money. So the one thing I was thinking about is making sure we have the resources to actually get the money and manage the projects, because I know we don't have a ton of staff in the city of Auburn, and there's a lot of grants out there for a lot of different things that are going on in the city. And if we don't have the resources for the people to go apply for that money, then we might miss out on a lot of things. So just making sure that we have those resources to both apply for grants and find those grants, and then also manage the projects, I think is going to be key. Because if we identify a project, but we don't have those other two pieces, it's going to be very hard for us to move some of that forward, because we just won't have the money to be able to do that. And then the other thing too that you mentioned, but I'd like to make sure we're including, is joint projects with other local organizations to make sure that we're coming together as a community on projects that are not just necessarily the city of Auburn, but we're working together with our other community partners. So all this is great. I'm looking forward to adding things and reprioritizing. Prioritizing is probably the hardest part of a CIP, because there's so much to do and you're trying to take bites of the elephant. And so I'm really excited to see this as it kind of moves forward and grows over time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Downing Calvillo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's been a lot that I would have that I plan to say has already been said. You know, again, I think this is a great document. It's a work in progress. Bravo to staff. I know this was a lot of work to put this together to compile all the other documents. So thank you very much. I echo the placement of a category on our city facility. So really happy that Councilwoman Amara mentioned that. And absolutely, we need to put the old City Hall in that column. So looking forward to doing that and to seeing how that progresses. But all in all, I think this is a great thing, very appreciative, and we will continue to work on this and get things done and have a transparent document for our citizens so that I'd love to see something like this online so that folks can see, you know, as we start to get these implementation plans completed, to have links to those plans so that people understand what the schedules are and so forth. But that's what it's all about, making sure that the community understands the priorities, that they participate in that process and see what we've been able to accomplish. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Amara.
I basically gave my comments and questions in the form of questions earlier, I suppose. So yeah, I just want to reemphasize how this document is, again, it's a ongoing document. It's, as John said, organic, and I look forward to public input. And also, again, I just want to echo one other thing that I think is really important and pretty easy to put in right now, something we should consider, and I mentioned it earlier. We're the endurance capital of the world, and you can't be an endurance capital if you don't have bike lanes. So I think the bike lanes are very important, and it's something that can be done in concert with the road overlay. So anyway, that's what I have to say about that one aspect. But overall, it's a great document, and thank you, John, for facilitating this.
Great, thank you. I'll be brief. Menjo, Chris, Christina, thank you very much for all your hard work putting this together. This is a really great start. I think for me, moreover, just the item, Chris, that you and I chatted about, the sludge dewatering, you know, thinking that we've got a $3.6 million item and it's closer to over a $7 million item. Having a format like this where you see year over year planned projected expenditures helps us as a council, helps the community better understand how tax dollars are planned to be spent. So really solid first cut at this, guys and gals, and I very much appreciate it. I agree with most of the other comments that have been made. I do think that I am excited to kind of see this thing evolve over time. And as year over year we go through this, you know, we'll add another column to the right and we'll drop a column off to the left. So we're always going to see kind of a 5 or 6 year horizon of city expenditures, capital outlays. So very happy to see the effort and progress that's been put into this. Thank you. Just a quick comment on the master plans. And I know we've got a couple that have been developed in the city, but it's tough to really plan for your future when you don't have a solid base to build projected expenditures, maintenance costs, those types of things on. So master plans are hugely critical. I know John understands this. I know staff also understands this. You know, I can't start a project without a master plan because for me to figure out project financing, I've got to understand what's it going to cost to build. So I'm happy to hear the conversation we had about, you know, making sure we understand all the assets and putting the plans together when the time is appropriate, I think makes complete sense. So I'm excited there. My last comment is related to the actual format of this spreadsheet. Sorry about the clock, everybody. So the most important column on this spreadsheet is the column on the far right. That's the funding sources. And there was a comment made, and I can't remember who made it, but there was a comment made about, are all of these projects funded? No, they are absolutely not funded. Anytime you see general fund dollars in the funding source, those are dollars that are going to be, you know, competing with other needs in the city. So when we've got fire engines, for example, that we maybe haven't been paying attention to or haven't been seeing on a regular basis, that we need to plan for those vehicle replacements and see that their funding source is general fund, that concerns me. So the general fund heading in most of these, any of these items that say general fund, that it's a competition for limited resources. So I believe that funding source column is the most important column on this spreadsheet. As we move forward, we'll hopefully have some other adds of potential funding sources. But all in all, a solid effort. Again, thank you, staff, for putting this together. John, thank you for quarterbacking this. Really appreciate everybody's hard work on this. And with that, Amy, did I ask you if we have public comment?
You asked and we do not.
Okay, still do not. Thank you. We'll go ahead and move on. Thank you for that effort, everybody. We'll move on to our city manager's report.
Just a couple of items. So in tonight's approval of on the pension bonds, you approved the draft preliminary official statement. The one thing I'd like to press, share that with your friends because it tells quite a bit about the city of Auburn, and it gets to the depths of the economics, it gets to the depths of our tax base on various things, and it is not nighttime reading. It's probably one of the most interesting documents that you will get. Not everybody likes to read the whole CAFR, and but the official statement will tell you a lot about the vitality of this community, but also the potential. Look at exponential growth that you see, and it represents the wealth of the community, the financial base of our tax base. So it's good stuff, and like I said, share with a friend. The housing element. At the last council meeting, I told you that we were going to bring that at the start of May. We've had to back that off simply so that we can get the ads in the newspaper and get the public noticing on that. So that will actually back off. We originally thought that we were going to get that on the May 10th meeting. That's not going to happen. So the housing elements go to the Planning Commission on May 18th, and it'll come to the council on May 24th. So look for that. Shout out to the Planning Commission. We have a very good Planning Commission. We went through last week and got the remedy supply at 875 Lincoln Way. Very nice project, very thorough. I give a lot of kudos to the PC on that one. They did a very good job on reviewing that. And finally, I appreciate the comments on the capital program. But I will tell you that Menjel, Chris, Christina are going to become the managers of this thing. And one of the, is we talk about our overall performance on things. Their ability to perform is going to benefit us immensely. One of the things that, whether it's SACOG or the Placer County Transportation Agency, they like cities that deliver. And the ability of us to execute and keep budgets, projects on budget and on time will make all the difference in the world. Tonight, the council approved on-call contracts. We now have an army behind us, and our ability to execute is going to happen. And I will tell you that of my very short tenure here, working with Menjel, Chris, and Christina on this has been very gratifying. Very good staff, very good professionals. They really delivered on this thing. So we're going to move this thing forward, and I appreciate all the comments from the council. We will absolutely deliver for you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, John. Let's go ahead. I'm just going to go around the horn here, folks, in order. I'm going to start with Councilwoman Amaro. Do you have any committee reports for us?
I do, thank you. Just very briefly, I did go to a DBA meeting. I went to mosquito vector, and I just have to give everyone an update because we're also out in the woods now. There are a lot of mosquitoes out now, but I'm happy to say they will die very soon. So there'll be relief soon. The other part was ticks. The other part I'm very happy to say is that the adult ticks are now dying off, and they were the ones that are on the grass, the green grass. But now there's the nymphs, and the nymphs can convey some diseases, including Lyme. However, they're only on rocks and wood. So just don't sit on a rock or a stump and you'll be fine. So anyway, there was an interesting meeting. I love the mosquito vector group. They're very efficient. They work very hard, and they have a lot of people in the field now. So they're working very hard. And then I met with Chief Canan just on my own. I wanted to get kind of an input on what the city police is doing here. And we have a wonderful police chief, and they work very, very hard. And it was very fun and interesting getting updated with him. And finally, I probably should have said it on public comment, but in case you haven't heard, mark your calendar for July 10th, 2021 at ARD. It'll be a memorial for former councilman Bill Kirby. And his family has invited all of us, of course. So that's the end of my report.
Thank you very much. Councilman Berland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any committee reports. I'll just report out though on two items. One that was mentioned at the last meeting, Fire Chief Spencer and myself will be sitting down with a number of other stakeholders to hear the Bureau of Reclamation's fire and fuels plan for the Auburn State Recreation Area. So I will, as he will, we will be sure to keep everybody apprised of what that plan looks like. And then lastly, I was invited to join Bonnie Gore in a Facebook Live that she is doing next Saturday for May being month. So on the theme that Councilwoman Amara brought up about biking, I will be joining her to talk about biking and the importance of it around our own community. With that, that's all I've got to report. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilwoman Riddell Harris.
Thanks, I didn't want to unmute. I went to the Auburn Economic Development Commission meeting where we talked about several projects that the group is working on for bringing in more tourism to the area. We talked about some efforts to work with the city on marketing and getting some resources for helping to do some marketing projects to have more unified messaging throughout the city and things like that. Some fun like day in the life, what you can do when you're in Auburn projects and fun things like that. So they're working on a lot of cool projects that I think will really help with doing outreach to people in other communities to bring them into Auburn. I also had a meeting with the Placer County Economic Development Commission for all of Placer County. And they talked a lot about their business retention and expansion project that they're working on. I sent a survey to John that he sent to kind of get distributed amongst our businesses to get more feedback on what we can do to help and assist businesses in the area that they're doing through Placer County. And then we had a presentation from the Placer Business Alliance. So lots of good feedback and good thoughts from different cities and areas and the county and stuff about what's going on in the area and working together on joint projects there. That's it.
Thank you. Councilwoman Dalton Calvillo.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of quick things. Endurance Capital of the World met last week. We are moving forward with our water bottle station pilot project that the council did direct the committee to work on. I think I reported previously that we're looking to incorporate that into the Tevis Overlook area because the foundation is actually making substantial improvements to that facility up there at the Tevis finish line before the fairgrounds. So looking forward to doing that. With Shaq, we had a meeting, and we will be bringing several historical and non-historical tiles to City Council for consideration in May. So look for that. We had a Pioneer Energy Governing Board of Directors meeting, and we talked about the rollout for providing energy to El Dorado County and Placerville. It won't happen until 2022. There's a lot of things to put into place, but a lot of the meeting was dedicated to ensuring that there was good communication to their residents and their commercial users with regards to the Pioneer Energy's energy. So we talked about that. And I think that really pretty much concludes my report for this evening. Aloha.
Aloha, thank you. I did have last week a SACOG board meeting. The big elephant on the agenda for this meeting was the 2021 funding round for the 4-county area. Again, that doesn't include Placer County because we have PCTPA that manages all of our state and federal funds coming into the county for Placer County. And it doesn't include El Dorado County. They have a similar MOP as well. So that was the bulk of the conversation. Watching the counties down there argue and arm wrestle over money has been interesting over the past 6 months. And then I did jump into the EDC meeting a little late with Rachel. I got tied up in another meeting, but following that, we did have a kind of a subcommittee meeting to talk about our budget requests for this budget cycle. So we're working on pulling that report together for our next council meeting. That's all I've got for this evening. Everybody, unless there's anything else. All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening, a wonderful week.